Hello everyone and welcome to Anuradha and Harini Innovative Channel. Today we are going to have a past learning session, that is a history session. So, are you all ready? Today we are not going to learn about Indian history which we did till class 8. We are going to learn something new, that is the history of France. Let us call it the French Revolution, the very first chapter of our history textbook. Let us start. First, let us learn about the French society in the late 18th century. There was a king named Louis XVI, and in 1774 he ascended to the throne of France. He was from the Bourbon family. He was just 20 years old and he married to the Austrian princess Marie Antoinette, who became the Queen of France later. But there is sad news here. Upon his accession, the new king found an empty treasury. Now, why did he find an empty treasury? Let me tell you. France had fought a lot of wars, and this led to the financial crisis of France. And plus, the king wanted to maintain an extravagant court at the immense palace of Versailles. This is not enough. Let's see what he does next. France helped the 13 American colonies to gain their independence from the common enemy Britain. All this added up to more than 2 billion livres, and the lenders who gave the state credit now began to charge 10% interest on the loans. Let's see, being in such a big debt, what does the Louis XVI do now? To meet his regular expenses, the entire state was forced to increase the taxes. Now, the state has increased taxes. But does everyone have to pay taxes? Now, let us learn about the three estates. French society in the 18th century was divided into three estates, but only the third estate paid taxes. What about the other two estates? First, let me tell you that the other two estates were named as clergy and nobility. And this all was a part of the feudal system that dated back to the Middle Ages. In this entire chapter, you will be coming across a word which is old regime. Do you know the meaning of old regime? Let me tell you. Old regime is usually used to describe the society and institutions of France before 1789. Why do we always refer to this word 1789? Because this is the year French Revolution began. Okay, let's move on. The members of the first two estates, that is the clergy and the nobility, they enjoyed privileges by birth. What does this mean? That if you're born in a clergy family or a noble family, then you will enjoy all the privileges. And the most important was that they need not pay taxes. The nobles enjoyed feudal privileges. But from where did they get these feudal privileges? They got it from the peasants. Peasants were a part of the third estate. Peasants were obliged to render services to the Lord. He had to work in his house, work in his fields, serve in the army, and participate in building roads. Do you agree that such a society should live? Obviously, no. The church, that is the clergy, extracted its share of taxes called tithes from the peasants, and finally, all members of the third estate had to pay taxes to the state. Only the third estate. I really feel pity for them. Now, let us see a very famous picture on the three estates which was painted long back. In this picture, what does the painter want to tell us? He wants to tell that the person who is sitting like a slave and carrying the load of the clergy, nobility, and the king is the third estate. So, does this picture convey that the third estate had to undergo a lot of difficulties? Yes, it does. for sure. Now let us move on. Now let us learn about substances crisis. Before I tell about the substances crisis, I want you to imagine there is a particular country and there is population rise in that country. What will that lead to? It would lead to the increase in food, increase in money, increase in shelter, etc. Let's see what happened to France. In the year 1789, France had to face a rising population, that is from 23 million to 28 million. This led to the rapid increase in the demand for food grains. What did France do at the situation? Production of grains could not keep pace with the demand. So, what the people did is that as they did not have resources, they increased the price of bread. And bread was the staple diet of the majority. Most workers who were employed as laborers in workshops, they had fixed wages. Nor did they increase, nor did they decrease. But even the wages could not keep pace with the rise in prices. That is why the gap between the poor and the rich widened. Now, what do I mean by this line? The gap between the poor and the rich widened. It means that the rich people, that is the clergy and the nobility, they could afford the money. But the poor people, they could not afford it. They could no longer buy the bread. And plus, when there was drought or hail, things became worse, right? Because there's going to be a bad harvest. What did all of this lead to? This led to substances crisis, and this crisis occurred frequently in France during the Old Regime. What do I mean by the Old Regime? As I've already told you all, Old Regime is nothing but a period that shows all the social and institutions in France before 1789. Let me tell you the simple definition of substances crisis. It means an extreme situation where the basic means of livelihood are endangered. Let's move on and see a diagram which will explain this much better. This is a diagram given in our textbook and everyone should know how to solve this. First, let's understand this diagram. France was going under really bad climatic conditions. So that led to bad harvest. What did bad harvest lead to? It led to the scarcity of grains. And what happens when there's scarcity of grains? The food prices will rise. Okay? And when the food prices rise, the poor cannot afford that much, and that is why they don't buy bread only. Obviously, if that person doesn't eat, it will lead to food riots and also weaker bodies. Weaker bodies, they will lead to increased number of deaths, and even food riots will lead to disease epidemics, which anyway is going to lead to increased number of deaths. Do you think the population will come down in such a way? Let's learn about that. The three philosophers. This is the main part of this entire chapter because this is when the third estate is encouraged to revolt against the king. In the third estate, it is never mentioned that only peasants, merchants, manufacturers are there. There are even educated people, right? Lawyers, administrative officials, teachers, etc. All these people were educated. That is why they felt that no group in the society should be privileged by birth. But how should be they privileged? They should be privileged on their merit. So we can write in a short way that a person's social position must depend on his merit. Now, people were scared to put forward this idea, but three philosophers, John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Montesquieu, these three people put forward their ideas in books. Let's see what John Locke wrote. In his two treatises of government, he sought to refute the doctrine of divine and absolute right of monarch. This is what Locke said. But Rousseau carried the idea forward and told that there should be a social contract between people and their representatives. The Spirit of Laws is a book written by Montesquieu. And what did Montesquieu want to say? He said that the government should be divided into legislative, executive, and judiciary. From where did he get inspired? He got inspired from the American democracy. Okay, now let me show you the pictures. This is Jean-Jacques Rousseau. This is Montesquieu, and this is John Locke. Now let's learn about the outbreak of the revolution. So now I've already told you that the three main characters have come. So now they have already encouraged the third estate to fight with the king. Let's see how they do that. Now, in France of the old regime, the monarch did not have the power to impose laws according to his will alone. We all know that there are three forms of government, right? The dictatorship, monarchy, and democracy. In dictatorship, king can take his own decisions. In monarchy, the king cannot take his decisions alone. He has to call the estates, right? Rather, he has to call the meeting of the estates general. So every estate will send their representatives. Okay. So now the king is going to hold an estates general meeting. Now this is a really good fact that this estates general meeting was held on 5th May 1789 after 12 years. So look at the time span. Now let's look forward. Now on 5th May 1789, Louis XVI called together an assembly of the estates, okay? And where was this held? In Versailles, and they were prepared to host the delegates. But the first and second estate sent 300 representatives. As the third estate were large in number, they sent 600 representatives. Even if they sent 600, they were all standing at the back. And these 300 people of each estate, they were sitting in the rows facing each other. And women, peasants, all the other non-prosperous sections of society were not allowed inside the assembly. Usually, voting in the estates general happens like one estate, one vote. This time also Louis thought that I will follow the same routine. But the third estate got up and they said, no, you will not follow this. Why? Because we want it to be one member, one vote. King said, no, I cannot take up this proposal. So he rejected the proposal. Immediately when he rejected the proposal, the third estate got angry and they walked out in protest. Okay, so now thanks for watching this video. Please like to this video. Put your suggestions in the comments area. The rest of the chapter will be continued in the second part. Bye and meet you in the second part of French Revolution.